morning.
We are learning Chodesh Tov, Good Chodesh. We're learning Mishna Kesubos, Perek Zayin, Chapter 7, Mishnah Vav, Mishnah 6. Okay. Now, we had a number of examples in the previous Mishnayos of a woman who could demand a divorce, and it's still considered her husband's fault for the breakup of the marriage, and therefore he has to pay ksuba, which means she demands a divorce and she gets her ksuba. In these cases that we're about to list now in the following Mishnah are situations where the man can divorce his wife for her behavior and not have to give her a ksuba. So here we go. These are the women who go out from their marriage or leave their marriage that can be divorced, and they will not receive a ksuba. They will not receive their ksuba, meaning where she loses her ksuba means when the Mishnah says that she does not receive her ksuba, it means that she loses her right to the standard ksuba payment of 100, 200 zuz, right? There's that standard payment of 100 for a non-virgin and 200 for a virgin. Any extra amount the husband added, any extra money that he added, and the monetary value of her nichsei tzayin barzal properties, which means a situation where she brought a dowry into the marriage of certain types of properties, and he makes up that if the marriage ends because he dies or he divorces her, that he will make sure that she gets the monetary value of whatever it is at this point of time. She could lose out, she could gain. It all depends on the situation at that time. But this is a thing. This is something that the man accepts upon himself in the ksuba. This is something that she will lose out on for the behaviors that are mentioned here in the Mishnah. However, if her tzayin barzal and maluk properties still exist, she may collect them as they are. I mean, any properties that she actually are still around, such as the dowry, or such as what's called nichsei maluk, where the husband has the ability to use the property, but the property belongs to her, and if the marriage ends, she takes the properties with her. Whatever is left around, she takes. She doesn't lose what's left around. She loses, though, what the ksuba gives her, such as the ksuba money or the monetary value of the properties that she brought in, if that is what they made up. But the actual properties, whatever is left, that is something that she does take, even in this case, even in this case where she is losing her ksuba. Now, another thing that's important to bring out here is that in the Mishnah cases that we're about to read, the wife loses her rights to her ksuba only if two witnesses testified that she sinned and she was warned beforehand that a wife who commits such a sin is divorced without receiving her ksuba. Meaning we're going to have a number of things that because of her inappropriate behavior, her sinful behavior, she could be divorced and lose her ksuba. That only happens, though, if there are two witnesses to the fact that she did so and that she was warned that if she behaves this way, she's going to be divorced without a ksuba. And the list of things we're about to mention are not just sins that she committed, but the kinds of sins or the kind of behavior that has a negative impact on their marriage. So here we go. So the Mishnah begins saying, when it talks about the women who leave their marriage, they're divorced without a ksuba, so the Gemara kind of gives it first a general category, general name. Two categories. Ho'iveres al das Moshe, one who transgresses the law or the code of Moshe, Yehudis, or she transgresses the code of a Jewess, or the code of Jewish conduct. One is she is not keeping the code of Moshe, basically the code of the Torah, and the other, she's not keeping the code of modesty, which was a mode of modesty that was an accepted practice of the Jewish people. It's not something in the Torah, but it was something accepted by the Jewish people as the kind of conduct that they keep. The standards of modesty, that I'm just reading here from the bottom, these are standards of modesty that are not written in the Torah, but are traditionally observed by Jewish women. Okay, so the first part is, Ezehi das Moshe. What falls under the category of the code of Moshe? Says the Mishnah, three things. She fed him food that was not tithed. Food, right, has to be, in order to be permissible to eat, you have to take off from it Trumas and Maasros, right? You got to make the separations of the Truma to the Kohen, the different ties that have to be taken. If they're not taken, it's called Tevel. You're not allowed to eat it. She fed him food that was not Maaser. She fed him food that was not tithed. She told him, "Oh, it's okay. The Kohen came by and he took it, and the Levi came by and he took it, and everything was taken care of." And he checks into it and he finds out that it is not true. That it was absolutely not true. And again, apparently, the situation is that there are two witnesses to the fact that it's not true. She was warned about it. And at the end of the day, this would be one example of where she would lose her ksuba. He could divorce her and she would lose her ksuba. Or she was intimate with him and she was a nida. She told him that she's okay. She's pure. She went to the mikveh. Everything's good. And he found that it's not true. How does he find out that it's not true? The Bartanura says, because in the times of the Mishnah, women who were a nida had special clothing that they wore as a nida, and it was clear they were a nida. So apparently, in front of her husband, she wore one thing. In front of her friends, she wore another thing. I don't know exactly the case here, but whatever the case exactly is that she told him she's okay and she's not. Either all situations, or she affects him. Right? It's not like she just did something wrong on her own. Doesn't say that when she does something wrong necessarily, or she does a sin, she commits a sin, that's a reason to divorce her. These are sins and to lose her ksuba. These are sins that have a direct effect on him. Or let's say she fed him bread and she never took off challah. Right? When you make a dough, you have to make a separation of challah to give to the kohen, and until then, and if you don't separate it, you're not allowed to eat it. Well, she told him it was separated, and it really wasn't. She said, Kohen came by, he fixed it up, or so-and-so came by and separated challah for me, and then the husband went and asked the guy, and he said, not true, never happened. So there's another situation where she fed him something forbidden. These are three examples in which we say that she affects the marriage in a negative way. You can divorce her, even without giving her a ksuba. The last example is of an oideres ve'ena mekayemes. She makes a vow, and she doesn't keep it. Now, why does that affect her marriage when she makes a vow and she doesn't keep it? So the explanation is because the Gemara says that a parent who makes a vow and doesn't keep it, the punishment can be they lose their children. That's what the Gemara says. Making a neder and not keeping it can be a reason for losing children. So if she makes a vow she doesn't keep it, she's endangering his children. And therefore, that is a reason for him to divorce her without giving her a ksuba. So that's the first category. Now we have the next category. V'zoyi das Yehudis. What falls under the code of Jewish practice? And that is the following. Yoyitz v'roisha perua. She goes out with her hair uncovered. That is something, again, that is an act of immodesty. That is something that definitely can affect the marriage. V'toiva bashuk. Literally translated, that means she spins wool in the marketplace. But it's talking about she's wearing wide sleeves. And when she raises her hands, what happens? The sleeves fall down and her arms are exposed. That, again, is considered not appropriate modest practice for a Jewish woman. Mudaberes in kol adam, and she talks with everyone, which the Bartanura explains means she talks she acts in a frivolous way with the young men. Right? That's the problem. She's speaking frivolously with young men. That can cause trouble. And therefore, again, this is considered she is not practicing the custom of a Jewish woman, and that would be enough of a reason to divorce her without a ksuba. Abishol Omer. Abishol says, another example, Av hamakalelas yolda b'fanav. Excuse me. She curses his parents in front of him. She curses her in-laws in front of her husband. That's, again, considered inappropriate behavior to be able to go ahead and divorce her. Rabbi Tarfon says, Ava kailonis, a woman with a loud voice. She's noisy. What does that mean? Vezehi kailonis. What does it mean, a noisy woman, that because of that you can divorce her without giving her a ksuba? She speaks in her house, and her neighbors hear her voice. That doesn't mean only she talks loud on the phone and you can hear next door what she's saying. It's very specific what we're talking about. The Mishna doesn't speak it out. But the Bartanura says the talking she's doing in a loud voice is she's demanding intimacy from her husband. And she's doing it so loud that everybody hears about it. That's already going over the line, and that's already something that he can divorce her without giving her a ksuba.
But if she burns the food.
All right. Okay. Now, back to the Chofetz Chaim. Let's say the person already, we're talking about a situation, two people went to a partnership. One partner doesn't know the other partner is not trustworthy. You know he's not trustworthy. That's the case we're talking about. But this case, yes, in previous cases, they didn't make the partnership yet. In this case, the partnership has already been made. Okay, so the partnership has been made. One guy does not recognize; he does not know the nature, the nature of his dishonest partner. But you know very well his nature. Totally bazeh. Now it depends like this if you can tell the person about it. If let's say you know that by telling the other partner that the guy made a partnership was not trustworthy, is essentially what he's going to do is he's just going to use it to protect himself. He's not going to use it in any way that he does something wrong, in the sense of breaking up the partnership, whatever it may be. But rather he's going to take that as precaution. It doesn't mean now he's going to rely on what he was just told about what he allows him to do, but it doesn't allow him to do, meaning obviously doing things that if you're a partner, you need to allow the partner to do. He's going to pay attention when he takes care of the books, right? Because he's one of the partners. You're going to look over what he does. You're going to make sure to be careful, so that he doesn't lose out. You got to let him know about it. You got to make sure, though, whatever was said before, the condition said before, you got to make sure to stand here too. But again, the whole point is, even you're telling him something that he does to protect himself, not to break up the partnership, not to mistreat his partner, because he can't accept for sure what you're saying, but he does it, but he takes it as precautionary measure to protect himself. So, for example, if the guy does the books, he's going to make sure to look them over. But if you know by telling this to the other partner, he's going to accept what you're saying as the truth. Now the other person will lose out because of that. He's going to break up the partnership, which you can't just automatically do. Or any other kind of damage that could be caused to this other person. Now let it tell him. Even though you know this other person is not trustworthy, that's still not enough of a reason to go ahead and tell the other person to do something wrong, to go ahead and to hurt the other person. That you can't necessarily do. You can tell him, so if that's how he's going to take it, you're not allowed to tell it to him. If he's going to take it just to protect himself, then you should tell it to him. Have a wonderful day and a good Chodesh Tov. So remind everyone there will not be Mishnah's class tomorrow.